Wow.
I just finished watching Marty Supreme, finally, which is the not direct biopic but inspired by a movie about the life of Marty Reisman starring Timothée Chalamet, Gwyneth Paltrow, Tyler the Creator, Odessa Azayan, Abel Ferrara, and a few others. And wow, do I have a lot of feelings, thoughts, mumblings in my head that I'm somehow going to try and throw at you. This time, no real script, just my thoughts. I've taken some notes just as I got home. And so warnings, there will be spoilers ahead. I am going to be discussing the entire movie. So if you haven't watched it, please save this video to your watch later and go watch it first. This movie deserves the money of a cinema ticket. I went into this movie primarily for two reasons. One, I've heard fantastic things about the movie, and I've seen Timothée absolutely graft during the press tour of this, and I've read the articles about him taking the table tennis table with him to other sets to practice and how long he's been preparing for the role, so I was really intrigued. Secondly, I'll admit that I am a fan of Timothée and I wanted to see what he was going to bring to a role like this one. I say this to show that I didn't come to this movie due to a love for table tennis, although I have taken part in my fair share of life-altering, relationship-destroying table tennis matches in my summer holidays, nor because of my knowledge of Marty Reisman or the world of table tennis. It's important that I mention this because while I was watching the movie, my god, the table tennis scenes absolutely were the thing that had me hooked. But before we go into that, let's start from the beginning. I'm not going to go through this scene by scene, the entire spiel, but I'm going to talk about my thoughts of the movie as we chronologically look at what the story is. We first meet Marty as he's working in his uncle's shoe shop in the Lower East Side of New York in 1952. Marty dreams of winning the British Open, which is coming up, to basically bring American attention to the sport. Early on in the movie, we immediately see his hustling, his craftsmanship, his salesmanship, and the kind of guy that he is. He won't take no for an answer, he's quite shitty about it, he's not the nicest person, but there's something about him that's got people hooked. We see this, for example, as he tries to convince his friend Dion and Dion's father to invest in orange-colored table tennis balls. The way he sells this to Dion's father reminded me a little bit of Wall of Wall Street, just the tactics that he uses, and it just shows off that side of Marty really well. I personally absolutely love the opening sequence. We see him engaging in an affair with his childhood friend Rachel, who's married, and the scenes really linger even when dialogue has finished, which is something I haven't seen for a while, and I loved it. It really got me hooked into the scene, even if it's a scene of them making love in the closet. And then we see the journey of Marty's sperm basically making its way to Rachel's egg to fertilize, while Forever Young is playing in the background. The movie then starts fully and we follow Marty as he tries to make his way to the British Open. Here he meets Kay Stone, who's a married woman, former actress depicted by Gwyneth Paltrow, who's married to Rockwell. He seduces her and they start their own affair, which we follow in multiple scenes throughout the movie. What I absolutely loved about this section of the movie was that this is when we got to see the real craftsmanship of table tennis for the first time. It's so clear how much work Timothée put into his skill set as a table tennis player. And as I mentioned, the table tennis aspect of this movie was not why I came, but it was the thing that I walked out enjoying the most. It's an intense sport that, paired with an intense and at times anxiety-inducing story, had me on the edge of my seat for the whole movie. In fact, this is where I should probably say that my only real gripe with the movie is that at times I feel like we spend too much time on other elements of the story and lost some of the passion of table tennis. While the plot is always moving forward because it all relates back to Marty's need to get to the World Championships in Japan, I personally at times felt lost in the more action-filled sequences in the movie rather than seeing more of the table tennis world itself. Back to the movie though, there are some absolutely crude jokes in this film, and they start just about the time of the British Open. Jokes are made about Auschwitz, about Hitler, about the nuclear bombs on Japan, and they're the types of jokes that linger on borderline. And as someone who's not Jewish nor Japanese but half Dutch and German, I don't think I'm the person to say whether these jokes were appropriate or not. I was sat in a packed theatre, and when the jokes came on, there was a mixture of laughter and this kind of anxious laughter where you don't know whether you should or shouldn't. I mean, Marty literally states that he will do to Klecki, which is the Hungarian player that he's trying to defeat, what Auschwitz couldn't. That's quite a lot. I personally saw this as a depiction of Marty's character, where he's this young guy who's desperate to be taken seriously and has this huge ego and thinks he needs to uphold himself as this unbothered, quick-witted man, and thinks that the only way that he can do that is by making crude jokes like this. The harshness of his jokes is later contrasted when we see a real depiction of Klecki's time in Auschwitz, and you could see this as an attempt to have Marty and us as an audience confront the reality of his jokes and words. However, my own personal opinion is that honey scene in Auschwitz, I found it slightly odd. If they were trying to do what I think they were trying to do, which is show the real harsh reality of Auschwitz, it personally didn't quite hit like that for me. The scene had this almost erotic undertone, which I don't know if that was purposeful, but so it just was a little bit off for me. As I said, the jokes continue throughout the movie, including him joking about throwing a nuclear bomb on Japan when he has to go and confront Endo in the final of the British Open, a Japanese player, and he ends up being defeated. I have to say that this scene was absolutely fantastic. Even though I had a feeling that obviously Marty was going to lose and that was going to be the catalyst of the rest of the story, the tension was built up so well throughout this entire scene. And it also again highlighted Timothy's own skills in playing table tennis, and it was so nice because it allowed us to have these longer shots of the match and not these constant intercut scenes with him and someone to stand in to play the matches for him. And of course we have Endo, who's played by real-life Japanese table tennis champion Koto Kawaguchi. I hope I didn't butcher that name. If I did, I apologize. Back to the story, Marty's defeat forces him to perform as like a halftime novelty act, while Milton Rockwell actually offers him the opportunity to go to the World Championships in Japan and have another kind of rematch with Endo, but it's a fixed match and he's expected to throw it. Marty refuses, but he not just refuses, he does so once again in such a crude, rude way by joking about Rockwell's son who passed away in the war. Again, just completely sabotaging himself. Something that he's confronted with towards the latter end of the movie when he eventually has to come back to Rockwell like on his knees and beg him to let him do the match anyway. And the only way that Rockwell will let him do is if he like publicly humiliates himself. But a theme throughout the movie for me was just that Marty never really seems to learn from his actions and just continues to do this type of shit and then find himself in deeper and deeper trouble. So Marty refuses, he comes back, he finds out Rachel is like 8 months pregnant, she says it's his kid, he's like, it definitely isn't my kid, she says yes it definitely is, and that's just a little bit of background to know as we move forward. After Marty initially refuses Rockwell, he's stuck in a rough place with no real way to get to the championships and no money left in his pockets. What follows is some time of tension building with Marty and his friend Wally, played by Tyler the Creator, and they run a scam at like a local pay-to-play table tennis game to win some money. Ultimately, this all comes to a crescendo in like a huge gas station explosion, allowing the tension to basically explode all over the screen. To me, this was a series of misfortune in Marty's life, and violence becomes more and more prevalent in the story. And I think he becomes more brash and unlikable as a result of that. We see him kind of continuously screwing over his friends. He impulsively almost kills Rachel's husband when he finds out that he's beating her, or at least he thinks he is. He later finds out that it was all makeup, and drags her and his friend Dion continuously into his own mess. Now, I'm definitely not saying Rachel's innocent in all of this. Dion he is, but Rachel definitely is not. I think this is depicted again when he reconnects with Kay at a stage play that she's producing, and he brings chaos to the set of that. Again, through his ego and his thinking that he definitely knows better, which in some moments I think he does, but the way he delivers it is just always bad. Kay and Marty end up having sex, which is followed by one of my favorite scenes of dialogue where Kay completely calls him out for what he is, and he's so venomous towards her, saying he clearly is old enough to fuck her in her hotel room while she's on her lunch break in the middle of a comeback, showing complete disrespect for who she is and robbing her in the meantime, only to find out later that the jewelry is actually costume jewelry and worth absolutely nothing, forcing him once again to come back to her later on in the movie on his knees, pretending like he didn't know and he feels bad for robbing her, but she sees completely through him and reads him like there's no other. She even introduces him to her manager as like an actor wannabe who has no talent, which I absolutely loved. This doesn't stop her from eventually trying to help him anyway to get to Japan, but she fails, which then results in the aforementioned scene where he has to publicly humiliate himself in front of her husband to be able to go. However, his troubles aren't over because Rachel, who he discarded earlier, even by saying, I have purpose and you don't, which is so rude, she's taking fate into her own hands, but she's not very good at doing that, and so causes a huge scene, which actually leaves quite a few dead bodies along the way. I'm not touching on the entire storyline, not because it doesn't matter, but just because otherwise I would sit here forever and talk about the entire plot of the movie, which I don't think we need to do. And also, this is the part of the movie where I did enjoy it, but I got lost in it at times, and not in the good way. more in a way of, okay, I see what's happening and so many things keep happening before we can get back to the table tennis. But to be honest, I just want to get back to the table tennis. There's a big altercation and she gets shot, and so he rushes her to the hospital and then basically drops her off there and makes his way to Japan with Rockwell. And this is where he's truly confronted by this humiliation, because now he not only has to throw the match, but when he does, they've added in an additional that he now has to like kiss a pig, and he's like, absolutely not. He ends up kind of crumbling and saying, that wasn't a real match, I want a real match, and Endo actually agrees to that and they have their final face-off. This also happens because Marty realizes he won't be able to compete in the World Championships, which is a huge turning point because it shows everything he's been doing this entire movie to get there through all these different random ways and causing chaos and mayhem everywhere he goes didn't pay off at all. Just because you're loud and brash and have talent but also huge ego doesn't mean that the doors just open. And I don't think he's expecting them to, but he also isn't expecting there to be real consequence to how he's treated people. And this is where he's really confronted with that. And I think he realizes that if in that moment he doesn't have a real match with Endo, he never will. So they have the match. He wins by 1 point. Again, very intense, very anxiety inducing, such an amazing scene. And we see Marty kind of have this overwhelming sense of emotion, but he kind of pulls back at the same time and almost immediately seems to make his way back to America to find Rachel in the hospital, who's now given birth to her son. I think it's a son. It might be a daughter, but I'm pretty sure it's a son. Maybe it's left ambiguous. And so we're left with the final shot of the movie, which is Marty looking at his child with absolute tears in his eyes. He's kind of like just crumbling emotionally. He's been through it for the last like 2 weeks. And hence we've kind of gone full circle. The movie started with a depiction of the start of Marty's potential fatherhood to the end where we see the result of that sex in the closet. Throughout the movie there are conversations about whether Marty is the father or not, and he initially very much is like, I am not. And so I saw someone on Reddit made a really great point that actually maybe Marty realizes in the end that that actually isn't his child and he was hustled all the way through. And I saw someone else made a really great point that at the beginning of the movie the fertilized egg then transforms into the table tennis ball that we follow through the match, kind of symbolizing that he needs to choose between fatherhood and table tennis, or like anything else in life really. And it ends with that again, and we don't really know what he chooses. The movie leaves it very ambiguous. Throughout the movie, we're constantly confronted with the impact of the choices made by Marty as a hustler and brash, egotistical young guy, leading to the moment where he then has to make this decision on what he wants to do. I really think this movie was an absolute masterpiece, and not to like quote Harry Styles here, but
the movie is like, it feels like a movie.
Timothée Chalamet was absolutely amazing and carries this movie on his back. The other actors also were really, really great, don't get me wrong, but Timothy really is at the center of all of this. And so I will be happy for him if he wins an Oscar for this. I am also rooting for Michael B. Jordan to win one for Sinners because that was so good, but both of them have been fantastic. As I mentioned at the beginning, I didn't go into this movie due to some undying love for table tennis that I have, but that really was the aspect that gripped me the most, and it felt kind of similar to The Queen's Gambit, which had such a love and care and respect for the sport and showcased that beautifully. Marty Supreme in the end I think is a character that doesn't need to be loved or liked, nor do you need to absolutely hate him. He's deeply flawed, makes stupid decisions, and keeps reaping the consequences of that, but at times not really learning from them, and he keeps breaking the rules. I mean, there's a scene where he's actively told don't go in the bathtub, and then he goes in the bathtub and falls through the floor and then blames the person who told him not to go in the bathtub, again trying to hustle him for money, and it doesn't work, so he hustles someone else, which then is the guy that ends up running this whole plot line of people getting shot and killing and dying, and oh my god. Yet he doesn't really seem to learn, maybe until the end, but again that's left ambiguous, and so you don't really know whether he has learned at this point from his actions or not. I do think though that that moment of absolute humiliation in Japan where he decides, you know what, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to play my match the way I want to, is a turning point for him, but again the ending leaves it ambiguous. I really don't think there's anything else I can say about this movie that probably hasn't been said in other videos, and that if you've watched it yourself, you yourself haven't already thought. But I'm just so glad that I got to watch it, and I'm so glad that the cinema was packed. I love it when the cinema is packed. I love hearing people laugh, be shocked, cry, scream, whatever. It just makes it so much better. And of course I had Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which is the closing song, stuck in my head for the entire journey home. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Marty Supreme. I'm sure you have your own. I would love to hear them. I want to speak to as many people as possible about this movie. Leave them in the comments below. Let me know what else you'd like to see. Let me know what other movies you're watching this year, and I'll see you in the next dimension.